it's the 4.3 video on revising, proofreading, and polishing your essay. Our learning objective is students will be able to write a very clear, error-free language in an appropriate register and style for a final draft of a literary analysis. The question I want you to have in your mind as you're watching this video is, how do I score high on Criterion D? Criterion D is not something we've talked about yet in the literary analysis work we have done in this class. So listen up, folks. First of all, here are the 2 bullet points for what Criterion D is. It's your use of language. And so the first question that the rubric asks is, how clear, varied, and accurate is the language that you use in your essay? And the second is, how appropriate is the choice of register and style in your essay? In order to score a 5, you want to have this said about your essay. The language is very clear, effective, carefully chosen, and precise, with a high degree of accuracy in grammar, vocabulary, and sentence construction. Register and style are effective and appropriate to the task. The register and style that you want to use for this essay is the register of a literary analyst. So highly academic, highly specific, and precise to literary analysis in particular. All right, well, let's tackle some of these questions in the Cornell notes. The first one is, how can I make my writing more precise and clear? There's one really good way to do this. You know what it is? What is that kitty doing? He's reading aloud his work. And if you read your writing out loud, you will be amazed at how quickly you find errors and awkward sentences. Even more so if you read it aloud to someone else who is listening. So it's a great technique. The best essays are written by tireless revisers. Revise after reading out loud and fixing those errors and awkward lines. How else can you make your writing more precise and clear? Well, make sure that every sentence in your essay is working. It has a purpose. And really, this can only be done after you've written your first draft. You go back and you ask yourself, is this sentence working? Does it have a purpose? If I took it out, would I be losing anything in terms of analysis, evaluation, and interpretation? Here are some things to look for as you are looking at these sentences in terms of what you can take out and how you can revise if a sentence isn't working. First of all, a lot of times we add words that are simply not needed. This comes very commonly with a passive to be verb linked to another verb, and you want to avoid that. You want to use active verbs only. Let's take a look at an example. Here is a passive verb in boldface. The ghost motif is used to convey the GI's powerlessness to combat death. If we want to change that to an active verb, we would say this: O'Brien uses the ghost motif to convey the GI's powerlessness to combat death. It makes the sentence functional, it works harder, and we don't have any extra to be verbs that aren't really doing much of anything but taking up space. So get rid of the to be verbs, keep your verbs active. Another thing that you can do to make sure each sentence is working is to delete any repeated words. It happens more often than you'd think. We end up saying the same thing more than once as we're writing a first draft, not even really realizing it. And so it's upon revision and reflection that you find those and that you delete them. Finally, another thing to do is to avoid filtering devices. And I have a whole nother question about that, so let's tackle that next one. Filtering devices are simply unneeded. They are needless phrases that don't add anything to a sentence. And we do them a lot. We use these a lot. And again, it's something that you can get rid of when you go back and revise. The image here that I made is kind of showing you what filtering devices are, because what this sentence says, avoid filtering devices, is nice, precise, specific. We only have 3 words, but so often we add this other junk, like it is important to, at all costs. Those are really filtering devices. They are not needed. We can say avoid filtering devices more precisely, more concisely, without the extra words. Okay, here are some that you want to avoid. This quote shows that. My thesis statement is, kind of. An example of this literary aspect is, this is an example of the literary aspect because, now the first time you're writing a draft, you're going to use these kinds of filtering devices just because you're trying to figure out what it is you want to say about your literary aspect. And so you need them, you need this sort of scaffolding in place just to be able to kind of figure it out. But once you've figured it out, you can go back and you can take away those filtering devices to make your language more precise and effective. All right, let's take a look at an example. Here is a long paragraph. It goes like this. He also seems to be talking directly to the readers as he says, it's time to be blunt. I'm 43 years old and I'm a writer now, making us think that this is the real Tim O'Brien, right here now. As I invent myself, I'm thinking of all I want to tell you about why the book is written as it is. O'Brien then tells us that the reason he tells us certain things in a certain way is because he wants us to feel what I know to, feel what I felt to know why story truth is truer sometimes than happening truth. This gives a deeper expansion and answer to why Tim O'Brien includes tricks throughout his novel, to show us that anything can be made real as long as it feels real. And that is exactly what O'Brien does. Okay, so I have the first issue highlighted here on this next screen. To be talking, did you catch what it is? It's a passive verb. We've got that to be linked with talking. And so we want to get rid of that. And we can simply do that by saying, he also seems to talk. We don't need the to be verb at all. All right, next one. Here is an issue. O'Brien then tells us that the reason he tells us certain things in a certain way is because. What do we got here? Well, we've got some words repeating, don't we? I understand why the student says it this way because O'Brien is actually writing about the act of writing. And so he is explicitly saying why he has chosen some of the techniques that he has chosen. However, it doesn't actually help make that point, and I think it's much more effective to just say explains. O'Brien then explains. He wants us to feel. We've got that active verb, no filtering devices or repeating words. All right, what else is problematic here? Oh, this sentence. I read a lot of sentences like this. This gives a deeper expansion and answer to why Tim O'Brien includes tricks throughout his novel. That sentence is not saying anything. It is just words. It is not needed. It's not working at all. And so the first thing to do is to figure out, okay, well, what point do I want to make in this sentence? And I think it has to do with his answer, why he includes tricks, right? And so how about this one? Here, O'Brien explains the crucial idea that truth is not what happened, but what one feels. I mean, that's the reason why he does it. And so if you just get to that reason, then you don't have to spend all that time saying he does this for important reasons to show the deeper meaning, blah, 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 blah. Just get to that deeper meaning. And it's easier said than done, right? It's a lot of work to get there, but that's how you want to revise those kinds of sentences. All right, here's our last one to show us that anything can be made real as long as it feels real, and that is exactly what O'Brien does. We've got some filtering here. How about this instead? O'Brien recreates not the actual occurrence for the reader, but the true feelings that result. So we're focusing on the point that's made, not the fact that he's making a point, that it's clearer, that it's deeper, that it's easier to understand, but just focus on that point. Actual occurrence is not as important as the feelings that are created. Alrighty, so some other things that here, oh, here's the whole example corrected. All right, some other things we want to look at are just simply avoiding errors. Read, reread, and read again. Reading aloud to someone else is even better. Watch for those underlines from Google. There probably is an issue. Google's not always right when they make corrections or suggest corrections, but usually there is some kind of problem if you've got some underlining going on. Enlist help from humans. Who do you know that is really good with grammar and mechanics, use of language? Enlist their help. Trade them for something that you can do for them. You can ask specific questions of AI, and I have another video about that I go into detail about the kinds of questions and the ways that you want to be using AI, like ChatGPT, and really what you want to avoid. So here's my best tip for you. Ask specific questions. You can't ever copy and paste their answer, okay? That's really the bottom line. But as I said, I'll go into it in more detail later. All right, see if you can find all the errors here, and then you're gonna write the corrected version. All right, first, I highlighted all of the problems. If you wanna tackle this on your own to see if you can find all the errors and correct them on your own, have at it. Pause the video here and correct the sentence. Write it down in your packet. All right, let's see what's wrong with this sentence. First thing is the very first word. What's the problem with it? Well, we need to indent. And you guys forget to do this a lot. So I think it's worth mentioning it, that we gotta indent by hitting tab. And it'll move over 5 spaces like so. The next one, what's wrong with this guy here? Do you know? Well, it's the name of a chapter, and so we want to put it in quotation marks, and then there's also a lowercase letter here that needs to be capitalized, so it would look like this when we correct it. How about the next one? What's the problem there? This time we're talking about the things that carried the book, not the chapters. So we actually want to underline or italicize titles of large works. Chapters would be in quotation marks. Book titles would be underlined or italicized, like so. How about this next one? What's wrong with this? Well, it's the same issue as The Man I Killed, right? Good form is the name of a chapter, so it needs to be in quotation marks with capital letters. How about this next one? With its purpose being to show, oh, there we've got some filtering devices. You don't have to have all those words. It just gets to be muddled. Instead, showing is perfect. And the last one, veterans. What's wrong with that? Well, it's not actually a proper noun. Veterans, it should be lowercase. So here's the correct sentence. You can write it down now if you haven't yet. All right, tips to use a formal academic register in the essay. Here's what you want to avoid. Personal pronouns like I, me, you, and your. Abbreviations like ETC, AKA, don't ever use those. Calling the author by their first name, Tim, Margaret. No, you are not on first name basis with the authors. We call them by their last name if you want to just use one of their names, O'Brien or Atwood. Slang, avoid kind of, flat out, pretty. Those are all slangy terms we want to avoid. Don't reference the reader either, the me, the grader, or the examiner. I hope you really like my essay because kind of thing. Tips to use varied language to show off your writing skills if you really want to go for that highest mark, that number 5. You can try using different sentence structures. Don't start every sentence with the object. Maybe start a sentence with an ly word, an adverb to shake things up a little bit. Use the 3-syllable or more word only if you know it and if it adds to your sentence. Name literary devices as much as you can. You guys need to do this much more often than you do. Simple things like simile should be named. But there's bigger ones too, right? Alliteration, juxtaposition, imagery, personification, analogy, metaphoric language. Ask me for help with some of these. Repeat the name of the literary aspect. Don't switch it up. If you're going to talk about the ghost motif, always use that term, ghost motif. It becomes a signpost for the reader so that they're able to follow your argument. Same thing with the rich idea. You want to state it the same way using it like a signpost instead of changing it. All right, how about tips to use MLA style for the essay? First of all, always use the literary present tense. And this is harder sometimes than it seems. Instead of O'Brien left for the border, O'Brien leaves. It's happening right now. It's called the literary present tense. Use Times New Roman Arial or Calibri 12-point font, 1-inch margins, 1 space after periods. Indent the first line of each paragraph with the tab key. Double space by clicking line and paragraph spacing double. And then this last one, if you're using numbers, here's the tip on this according to MLA. You're going to spell out numbers that can be written in 1 or 2 words. So 3, 15, 76, 1,000, 12 billion. And use numerals for other numbers. So if it's more than 1 or 2 words, like 2 3/4, 584, 1,001, 25, is that million? I believe so. So those are some tips for MLA style. Oh, such good stuff. This nitpicky stuff. Those of you who like it, God bless ya. I once upon a time liked it. It sort of gets on my nerves now. But you know what? The good news is we have a lot of technology to help us. And that's what the next video is all about. Using AI ethically and effectively. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you later.